First story, connecting the dots. I dropped out of Reed College after the first 6 months, but then stayed around as a drop-in for another 18 months or so before I really quit. It started before I was born. My biological mother was a young, unwed graduate student, and she decided to put me up for adoption. She felt very strongly that I should be adopted by college graduates, so everything was all set for me to be adopted at birth by a lawyer and his wife. Except that when I popped out, they decided at the last minute they really want a girl. So my parents, who were on a waiting list, got a call in the middle of the night asking, "We've got an unexpected baby boy. Do you want him?" They said, "Of course." My biological mother found out later that my mother had never graduated from college, and that my father had never graduated from high school. She refused to sign the final adoption paper. She only relented a few months later when my parents promised that I would go to college. This was the start in my life, and 17 years later, I did go to college, but naively chose a college that was almost as expensive as Stanford, and all of my working class parents' savings were being spent on my college tuition. After 6 months, I couldn't see the value in it. I had no idea what I want to do in my college life, no idea how college was going me to help figure it out. And here I was spending all the money my parents had saved their entire life. So I decided to drop out and trust that it would all work out okay. It was pretty scary at the time, but looking back, it was one of the best decisions I ever made. The minute I dropped out, I could stop shaking the required class that didn't interest me and begin dropping in one that looked for more interesting. Second story is life after dropping out. It wasn't all romantic. I didn't have a dorm room, so I slept on the floor in friend rooms. I returned Coke bottle for 5-cent deposit to buy food with, and I would walk the 7 mile across town every Sunday night to get one good meal a week at the Hare Krishna temple. I love it and much what I stumbled into by following my curiosity and intuition temple. And intuition turned out to be priceless later on. Let me give you one example. Reed College at that time offered perhaps the best calligraphy instruction in the country. Throughout the campus, every poster, every label on every drawing was beautifully hand calligraphed. Because I had dropped out and didn't have to take the normal class, I decided to take a calligraphy class to learn how to do this. I learned about serif and sans serif typeface, about varying the amount of the space between different letter combinations, about what makes great typography great. It was beautiful, historical, artistically subtle in a way that science can capture, and I found it fascinating. None of this had even a hope of any practical application in my life, but 10 years passed between different letter combinations. About what made great typography great, it was beautiful, historical, artistically subtle in a way that science can capture, and I found it fascinating. None of this had ever a hope of any practical application in my life. But 10 years later, when we were designing the first Macintosh computer, it all came back to me, and we designed it all into the Mac. It was the first computer with beautiful typography. If I had never dropped in on that single course in a college, the Mac would have never had multiple typeface or proportionally spaced fonts. And since Windows just copied the Mac, it's likely that no personal computer would have them. If I had never dropped out, I would have never dropped in on that calligraphy class, and personal computer might not have the powerful typography what they do. The third story is the lesson about connecting dots. Of course, it was impossible to connect the dots looking forward when I was in college, but it was very, very clear looking backwards 10 years later. Again, you can connect the dots looking forward. You can only connect them looking backward. So you have to trust that the dots will somehow connect in your future. You have to trust in something, your good, your destiny, life, karma, whatever. Because believing that the dots will connect down the road will give you the confidence to follow your heart, even when it leads you off the well-worn path, and that will make all the difference. The next story is love and loss. I was lucky I found what I love to do early in life. And I started Apple in my parents' garage when I was 20. We worked hard and in 10 years Apple had grown from just the two of us in the garage into a 2 billion company with over 4,000 employees. We had just released our finest creation, the Macintosh, a year earlier, and I had just turned 30 and then I got fired. How can you get fired from a company start? Well, as Apple grew, we hired someone who I thought was very talented to run company with me. And for the first year or so, things went well. But then our vision of the future began to diverge. And eventually, we had a falling out when we did our board of directors side with him, and so at 30 I was out and very publicly out. What had been the focus on my entire adult life was gone, and it was devastating. I really didn't know what to do for a few months. I felt that I had let the previous generation of entrepreneurs down, that I had dropped the baton as it was being passed to me. I met with David Packard and Bob Noyce and tried to apologize for screwing up so badly. I was very public failure, and I even thought about running away from the valley. Next story is finding a new beginning. But something slowly began to dawn on me. I still love what I did. The turn of events at Apple had not changed that one bit. I'd been rejected, but I was still in love, and so I decided to start over. I didn't see it then, but it turned out that getting fired from Apple was the best thing that could have ever happened to me. The happiness of being successful was replaced by the lightness of being beginner again. Less sure about everything, it freed me to enter one of the most creative periods in my life. What came after Apple? During the next 5 years, I started a company named Next, another company named Pixar, and fell in love with an amazing woman who would become my wife. Pixar went on to create the world's first computer animated picture film, Toy Story, and is now the most successful animation studio in the world. In a remarkable turn of events, Apple bought Next, and I returned to Apple, and the technology we developed at Next is at the heart of Apple, current renaissance, and Lauren and I have a wonderful family together. I'm pretty sure none of this would have happened if I hadn't been fired from Apple. It was awful testing medicine, but I guess the patient needed it. Next is finding what you love. Sometimes life's going to hit you in the head with a brick. Don't lose faith. I'm convinced that the only thing that kept me going was that I love what I did. You've got to find what you love, and that is as true for work as it is for your lover. Your work is going to fill a large part of your life, and the only way to be truly satisfied is to do what you believe is great work. And the only way to great work is to love what you do. If you haven't found it yet, keep looking and don't settle. As with all matters of the heart, you know when you find it. And like any great relationship, it just gets better and better as the years roll on. So keep looking, don't settle. Third story about that. When I was 17, I read a quote that went something like, "If you live each day as if it was your last, someday you will most certainly be right." It made an impression on me, and since then, for the past 33 years, I've looking in the mirror every morning and asked myself, if today were the last day of my life, would I want to do what I'm about to do today? And whenever the answer has been no for too many days in a row, I know I need to change something. Remembering that I'll be dead soon is the most important tool I've ever encountered to help me make the big choice in life. Because almost everything, all external expectation, all pride, all fear of embarrassment or failure, these things just fall away in the face of death, leaving only what is truly important. Remembering that you are going to die is the best way I know to avoid the trap of thinking you have about something to lose. You're already naked. There is no reason not to follow your heart. About a year ago, I was diagnosed with cancer. I had a scan at 7:30 in the morning, and it clearly showed a tumor on my pancreas. I didn't even know what a pancreas was. The doctor told me this was almost certainly a type of cancer that incurable, and that I should expect to live no longer than 3 or 6 months to 6 months. My doctor advised me to go home and get my affairs in order, which is Dr. Code for prepare to die. It means to try and tell your kids everything you thought you'd have the next 10 years to tell them in just a few months. It means to make sure everything is buttoned up so that will be easy as possible for your family. It means to say your goodbye. I lived with that diagnosis all day. After that evening, I had a biopsy where they stuck an endoscope down my throat, through my stomach, and into my intestines, put a needle into my pancreas, and got few cells from the tumor. I was sedated, but my wife who was there told me that when they viewed the cell under a microscope, the doctor started crying because it turned out to be a very rare form of pancreatic cancer that is curable with surgery. I had the surgery and thankfully I'm fine now. Reflection on mortality. This was the closest I've been to facing death, and I hope it's the closest I get for a few more decades. Having lived through it, I can now say this to you with a bit more certainty that when death was a useful but purely intellectual concept. No one wants to die. Even people who want to go to heaven don't want to die to get there. And yet that is the destination we all share. No one has ever escaped it, and that is as it should be. Because that is very likely the single best invention of life. It's life change again. It clears out the old to make way for the new. Right now, the new is you, but someday, not too long from now, you will gradually become the old and be cleared away. Sorry to be so dramatic, but it's quite true. The last story is don't waste your limited time. Your time is limited, so don't waste it living someone else's life. So don't be trapped by dogma, which is living with the result of authorable thinking. Don't let the noise of other opinion drown out your inner voice. And most important, have the courage to follow your heart and intuition. They somehow already know what you truly want to become. Everything else is secondary. When I was young, there was an amazing publication called the Whole Earth Catalog, which was one of the Bible of my generation. It was created by a fellow named Stewart Brand, not far from here in Menlo Park, and he brought it to life with his poetic touch. This was in the late 1960, before personal computer and desktop publishing. So it was all made with typewriter, scissor, and Polaroid camera. It was sort of like Google in paperback form. 35 years before Google came along, it was idealistic, overflowing with net tools and great notion. Stewart and his team put out several issues of the Whole Earth Catalog, and then when it had run its course, they put out a final issue. It was the mid-1970, and I was your age. On the back cover of their final issue was a photograph and early morning country road. The kind you might find yourself hitchhiking on if you were so adventurous. Beneath it were the words, "Stay hungry, stay foolish." It was their farewell message, and they signed off. Stay hungry, stay foolish, and I have always wished that for myself. And now, as you graduate to begin you, I wish that for you. Stay hungry, stay foolish. Thank you all very much.